Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Mainstream Indie Music channel. If you're watching this video, first I welcome you. I welcome all of our subscribers. We just passed 300, and it's such an awesome privilege for you all to be spending your time listening and really reminiscing about indie music history. Now, it's probably no doubt if you were listening to indie music in the 2000s and close to 2010 at this point, more than likely, you remember the song that we're talking about this week because this song predominantly got its start on the free music list that used to pop up on iTunes. And it peaked, I believe, at number 2. It might have peaked at number 1 on the alternative charts list. And yes, if you're old enough to remember, you know that iTunes used to split up its music by genre. It was a much bigger deal back then versus how it is today. And this is the song Animals by Neon Trees. Now, we're going to get into the history of the song. We're going to go into a little bit of the history of the band, but not too much. And then we are going to go into what Neon Trees have been doing since then. So before the song Animal became popular, Neon Trees as a group was composed. It's a 4-piece band, and 2 of the members, that is Tyler Glenn and Chris Allen, they actually grew up together in California before they met the other 2 pieces of the band, Elaine and Brandon. And what's kind of cool about the song, or not, I'm sorry, not the song, but the name of the band, is they got the name from those, if you've ever been to In-N-Out, there are those like neon trees, like palm trees almost, looking composed of the logo. And that's where he got the name from, just kind of looking at those neon trees all the time. Neon Trees as a band, what's interesting too is they got popular very, very quickly. Because pretty much after performing and practicing as a group together, they were noticed by the Killers. So one day I'm really going to have to make a video about the impact the Killers made on indie music, because they found so many bands, it's ridiculous. Or so many bands toured with them, and just they kind of help prop up other bands' popularity. It's kind of the same thing with like Fall Out Boy with pop punk. Fall Out Boy found so many pop punk bands, or like funded them, or endorsed so many pop punk bands that, so many of them just spawned out from Fall Out Boy. But it's the same thing with the Killers. So the Killers drummer had noticed them playing one night. I believe they were in Las Vegas. They weren't in California. And pretty much decided, like, hey, these guys are pretty good. They were so good and they made such a big impact that he decided to talk the rest of the Killers into not only promoting them, but to actually having the Neon Trees open up for them on tour. And it was just, like, when I say perfect timing, this was perfect timing. Because at that same exact moment, that's when they got talked into signing, I believe it was with Mercury Records. This is all, like, late 2008, maybe early 2009. And right after they signed on, that's when they went on tour, and then that's when they worked on their debut album, which was called Habits. That was released in early 2010, and Animal was chosen as the lead single from that album. And it was the perfect song to have as a lead single, because if you are looking for like a radio friendly, commercial friendly song that's upbeat, that has fast, it's extremely catchy, so many hooks to it, kind of simple lyrics to it that make it kind of enjoyable to like a broad audience. This is the song for you, and I believe because it was so catchy, especially the chorus, it just really boosted its popularity. It just fell into place just perfectly. And so that caught, of course, the attention of iTunes, which decided to have Animal featured as the free single of the week. And it just worked so perfectly for them and boosted them so much into, from kind of like an indie band to the mainstream. They did the talk show circuit here in America. Their single, they even got a third single off of it called Your Surrender. Mark Hoppus of Blink-182 selected it as his pick of the week in Spin Magazine. Everything just aligned perfectly for them. And this was, for people that grew up in the 2000s indie music era, when we reached the new decade of music, the 2010s, that's really when indie music was kind of on its way out. You kind of had your last few groups that were squeezing in there in the early 2000s indie wave. But they just hit everything at perfect timing and became a massive, massive hit. You could say this is kind of where they left the indie music group behind and went into the mainstream, especially their second album and hit off of it, which was called Picture Show and Everybody Talks, was, again, just kind of seen everywhere. Huge commercials for it. Their third album continued that trend, Pop Psychology, which was released in 2014. If you're keeping track, that's 3 albums in about 4 years, which is just absolutely insane. They had a few decent hits on it. Sleeping with a Friend was the main one. And they released a couple singles, but around that time, let's kind of fast forward to 2016. So a big part of Neon Trees and them as a group individually is they had come from the Church of the Latter-day Saints or Mormons, and Tyler Glenn, specifically the lead singer, started to speak out against their decisions as the church. I'm not going to get into all that. This is strictly just a channel about music and the history of music. But this is a big part of Neon Trees as a group because in 2016, he made an entire solo album based off of his feelings and experiences with that decision that was made in the church. And really, them as a group, as Neon Trees, really hit a big lull. I don't know if it was just based off that decision. I would not venture to say so. I would also kind of venture to say, like I mentioned earlier, that the time frame of indie music had pretty much ran out about that time where the whole scene of music changed. And I think, sadly, that genre of indie music was pretty much drying up and evaporating. So, that mainstream success that they had been enjoying up to that point was starting to dwindle. I can kind of imagine maybe they weren't drawing as big of crowds like they were, especially if they had never experienced that before. Like I said, they immediately had popularity right off of the bat. So now, you're kind of used to not opening up to as big of bands anymore, not having as big of crowds anymore. And they did release an album in 2020, called I Can Feel You Forgetting Me, which was released right in the middle of COVID, July 2020. And then they've released a new single in 2021. I've looked at, they have a Reddit page. They were active on Reddit, especially around the time of their last album. And it seemed like that decision about expressing their opinions, and especially his opinions about their religion, and kind of get caught up in all that, and then COVID happening right after that, really kind of affected the trajectory of themselves as a band. And I don't know if they really regret that. It doesn't really seem like they do. It seems like they stand behind everything that they've done. But definitely, they are not as big as they once were. But like I said, to be fair to them, I also think that's just kind of the scene of indie music. And that's pretty much what happened to Neon Trees after their hit single Animal. I want to hear your thoughts. Do groups like Neon Trees, will they ever be back on top again? I want to hear what y'all have to say. But that's all I got for this week, and I will see y'all next week.